Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second quarter housing outlook. Today's focus is on Florida. I'm Allie Wolf, the Chief Economist with Zonda, and I'm pleased to be joined today by Larry Buckner, our Senior Manager of Advisory and Florida expert. As mentioned, we are with Zonda, a housing data and consultancy firm. We track the entire building life cycle, and with our data, we can deliver one-of-a-kind housing insights to builders, developers, building product manufacturers, loan officers, and more. Our data is delivered through Enterprise, our unified solution for housing market analytics. Enterprise has traditionally been used on the desktop, but we recently announced the iPad version. Subscribers can now easily track projects, run market analyses, and view site reports on the go. We take our proprietary data and layer in other market health indicators to deliver our clients market snapshots for nearly 70 metros across the country. You can get your free local report today by scanning the QR code or at zondahome.com/market-snapshot. Beyond data, our team provides analysis. We have our national outlook, our report that looks at national, regional, and local trends spanning the economy, housing market, consumers, demographics, policy, and more. We have our building product outlook report that is unlike anything I've ever seen before, where Todd Tamalak and team dive into remodeling and building product trends by category and provide thorough forecasts. And we have our rental housing outlook. Subscribers will get our latest report this week, where Sean Fergus and team analyze Zonda's proprietary data on the current state of the build-to-rent market and where it is going. We also have direct-to-consumer websites, livable.com and newhomesource.com. Both connect consumers directly to new home builders and communities by showing listings and providing digital solutions. For today's webinar, we have two sponsors. Our first is Westwood Insurance Agency. Westwood Insurance Agency was founded by a home builder more than 70 years ago and provides home insurance for today's housing market. Westwood Insurance Agency works with 15 of the top 20 builders in the Builder 100 list and writes in all 50 states with insurance options even in the toughest markets. As some of you saw, we use Westwood Insurance Agency's data on our last housing market update to calculate the all-in housing payment. For more information on Westwood Insurance Agency, visit westwoodinsurance.com/partners. We are also lucky that Cornerstone Home Lending is our second sponsor today. Cornerstone Home Lending has been leading the lending industry since 1988. With more than 100 builder relationships coast to coast and $1 billion in builder forward commitments funded last year, Cornerstone Home Lending is a premier choice among builders. Cornerstone Home Lending partners with builders, bringing a wealth of time-tested experience, financial stability, and unmatched in-house resources to their partners. Visit Cornerstone Home Lending at Builder 100 for a chance to win a getaway to Pebble Beach. Thank you to Westwood Insurance Agency and Cornerstone Home Lending for your sponsorship today. And finally, you will not only see Cornerstone Home Lending at Builder 100, but also Tim Sullivan, Todd Tamalak, Molly Carmichael, and other Zonda experts from May 6th through 8th in Dana Point, California. With that, it's time to dive into the content. I'm going to start with a 15-minute high-level discussion before I pass to Larry to focus on the Florida markets. And where I want to start is with the important data point we often do, looking at the existing home market. When we look at active listings, January, February, and March of this year came in as the highest point since 2020 for all 3 months. March active listings came in up 24% compared to last year. which sounds like a big shift. And we are seeing a lift in listings. But if we compare this back to 2019, we're still down 40%. As you track out the list, comparing to pre-pandemic, which we would deem more normal or healthy, you can see Ocala and Austin are a couple of the markets that are above those 2019 levels. Most markets, including top markets in Florida, are still below that healthy benchmark. But we also need to track out listings for that change compared to last year. To us, this gives some markets that we need to watch. It flags our attention. And the dotted line that you see is the national average. You can see lots of Florida markets, Sarasota, Naples, Tampa, Orlando, Miami, are far outperforming that year-over-year change on the national level. When we look at changes like this, we ask ourselves why. And we know that the reason that listings is up is a combination of good and bad factors. In some of these markets, people are looking at either the availability of insurance or the cost of insurance, plus the renewals that are coming in and higher property tax bills, and it's making them question their current living situation. What we also know, though, is besides the lock-in effect, when you ask consumers, why are you not moving? They often say it's because there's not much choice. There's nothing that's exciting to move to. We know Florida is one of the top production markets across the country, and we think that that's allowing for a little bit more mobility. But the reason we start with the existing home market and looking at those listing trends is we know that listings have traditionally been our biggest competition in the new home side. And as we track out the listing environment, it can give us a little bit of a sense of, does the new home market continue to be a dominant player or does it start to wane? What we see so far this year is a growth, a normal seasonal growth in the market. New home sales through March coming in above where they were last year, above 2019. And really, you could say the market has had this good start to the year. Not great, not blockbuster, but we're seeing a little bit of an overperformance. The way that we can capture that is through our ZMR, our Zonda market ranking. And what the ZMR does is it looks at history and it looks at seasonality, and we can decide from the numbers based on math where a market is today. Nationally, the market came in as slightly overperforming in February, 64% of the top markets also overperforming. Any of those green dots fall in that camp. And this is the return of that east-west divide where you see a lot more of those green dots in the eastern part of the US. But I want you to focus on Florida. Even within the state, there's a mix between underperforming, average, and overperforming markets. Larry will spend more time digging into a few of those later in this presentation. But if we think about March, this Friday, we're going to release our new data. If you're a subscriber to the National Outlook, you can log into the portal and see the updated map and the changes. But what I can tell you is that March also came in nationally as a slightly overperforming market. Instead of 64% of markets overperforming, we're at 62. So pretty similar when you compare out March from history and accounting for seasonality. I'm not going to spend much time today talking about incentives because beyond what we talked about with the lack of resale supply, we know that especially since interest rates are going back up again, a lot of people have found themselves attracted to the new home space because of some of the money and the financial support they can get from the building community. But the other important part comes down to supply. So when you look at that resale backdrop, you say, well, what do builders offer that are competitive? And builders have their quick move-ins, homes that can be moved into within 90 days. And the history of quick move-ins is interesting, which is back in 2022 when the market was slowing, we saw quick move-ins build, and we heard from builders, we have more homes than people that can buy them. That was a show to us that the market had slowed. But now we see quick move-ins have held high, not as high as where they were at the peak, but the reason we see quick move-ins at this elevated level, especially compared to 2019, is a strategy shift. Builders are looking at the backdrop, they're saying, what makes sense? Where can we find our advantage today? People like that they can see an existing home, that they can lock their rate in more real time. And even a builder like Toll, that I think maybe we wouldn't have thought would have leaned into QMIs, have realized there is that idea and that focus on certainty, where now instead of 10% of their markets that are quick move-ins, they're up to 40 to 50%. If you step back though, and you think about where the market is today, what I'm struggling with is the market feels very similar to the beginning of last year, where if I'm trying to assign a 1-word or 2-word label to the market, it's really hard to do. Because the state of the market now really depends on what location are you in? What submarket are you in? What's the competition in that submarket? What kind of homes are you building? Who is the builder? Who is the buyer? I find it very hard to describe the market in one phrase where most builders will nod and say, yeah, that's how it feels for us today too. When we ask builders to describe the market, we see some comments like buyers are used to higher interest rates. The market's picking up steam. The market is so resilient. I'd say the majority of the builders fall in this middle camp saying, well, the market feels stable, or it's slow and steady. It's healthy, but still rate sensitive. But you'll find your fair share of builders saying that the market today is still crazy unpredictable. They're fighting for sales. They have to heavily discount inventory to ultimately secure that sale. And so I think the way that I could describe it fairly comfortably is it still takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of coaching. It takes a lot of money to secure a sale today. But I want to step back. If we think about Florida, the next data set I'm going to show you is migration. And we know that Florida has been a big migration hotspot. And I think it's really easy to assume that some of our green comments come from the builders in Florida. Because when you look at where have we seen more people moving in than moving out, 3 of the top 10 are in Florida. This is based on a population of 1 million plus. Now, what I'm going to do is challenge that idea that just because a market is big for migration means it's guaranteed success. To me, I think it has lots of room and lots of potential once we get past maybe a little bit of a market growing a bit too fast for its own good. I'll talk about that in just a moment. But if we look at more people moving in than moving out, for the second year in a row, we have Jacksonville at number 1. We see Tampa move from number 2 to number 3. We see Orlando originally at 5 last year, down to number 10 in the most recent data. We know that not everyone likes the idea of cutting it by a certain population, so we also can show you the migration trends regardless of population. And here now we find 10 of the 15, or 67% of all the top markets for migration are in Florida. The important takeaway here, though, to me, is looking at that 2022 versus 2023 number. In most markets, we're finding the rate of growth has actually decelerated versus picked up. And that's the common trend across the country, is the rate of growth and the level of migration has slowed from where we were at the height of the market. But let me go back to what I talked about where, okay, if we're trying to make sense of what markets are doing the best, and you asked me to just tell you what are the 2 indicators you should look at to understand market fundamentals, to understand growth, I would say you want to look for a market where there's a lot of migration and there's a healthy labor market. But let's take that example to Jacksonville. When you saw in the ZMR, we have Jacksonville as average. Jacksonville is number 1 for the most migration. There are 20% more high income jobs in Jacksonville compared to pre-pandemic. But I think the third layer is looking at what have we seen with home prices? What have we seen with affordability in a market relative to itself? Remember, the East-West divide that we saw in the Zonda market ranking. You see a lot more of the red clustered in the West, which I think plays into those markets having more sensitivity to home prices, but they also had a higher base price before we saw prices go up. If you track out Florida, though, you can see a little more than the majority of the state falls in that deep red color as well. And I think this is just a little bit of my counterpoint to some of the enthusiasm is when you have an area that has so much migration for so long and so quick, migration can sometimes lead to near-term growing pains. So for example, I think by logic, you would think Jacksonville should be significantly overperforming. And we do think it's still a good market. We still believe in it. We like the fundamentals, but it does just show some of the choppiness of those growing pains. We also see this in builder sentiment, in pricing, and starts. And those are the last three slides I want to finish with here, is looking at our builder survey, but then also layering in the national numbers compared to what we're seeing in Florida. One of the questions that we've loved asking is just about market expectations. And if we look at January, February, and March, you do still see the majority of builders saying demand is on track with expectations, but a little bit of a shift to the right, where you have a few more builders now saying demand was a bit slower than expected. If you look at Florida, it's kind of a flip from that national level. 40% say demand is on track, 60% say it's slower than they expected. And I think that's just because the expectations were so high given the fundamentals that we just talked about. Let's then turn it to price. Nationally, what we know is 50% of builders raised prices as of March. In Florida, it's about 30%. You have the majority of builders that have held prices flat. And in fact, when we look at our Zonda data for Florida, some of the markets in Florida lead the country with having the most incentives that are being used. To me, this ties back to what we showed with some of the red parts of the state and some of the consumers that are locals that are trying to make sense of the market, as opposed to those that are the newcomers that are fueling the overall market growth. But I want to finish here with starts. When we look at starts, nationally, what we find is still 80% of builders plan to start more homes this year versus last year. That 80% has held in January, February, and March, even with higher interest rates. I gave a presentation, I was with Larry at the beginning of this year, and when I showed the Florida number, we were at about, I think it was 95% of builders in Florida plan to start more homes this year versus last year. Most recent data gets us at 67. So we have seen a little bit of a downshift in the anticipation of starts, which I think partly comes to the growing pains, partly comes to affordability, partly land and lot supply, partly resale competition, which is why the housing market's so complicated to look at. There's so many different moving parts. But as we look at the market on a whole, where we have it is still about 4% growth nationally. We saw the new housing starts data come in today. There's now been 3 months over 1 million, so we're a little bit below that national level. We may bump it up a little bit, but what we saw in today's report is some of the choppiness in starts that relates to those things that I listed off for some of the choppiness in Florida as well. Now with that, I'd like to introduce Larry Buckner, Zonda's Senior Manager of Advisory and Florida Expert. So Larry's going to take a lot of the things that I talked about and apply it to a much more local basis and add more context on the economy and what's happening on the ground. My favorite thing about Larry is that he provides true boots on the ground. More often than not, when I call Larry, he's out in the field talking to sales teams, touring communities. As an Ohio native, I just have to look past his Michigan roots. Larry, let me turn it to you.
Thank you, Allie, for the awesome introduction. Welcome everyone to the local market section of the second quarter housing forecast. We have a lot to cover. We're going to dive into Tampa, Orlando, and Jacksonville. Let's get started. We're first going to cover the Tampa market, and we'll start by defining the key counties that make up the Tampa MSA: Hernando County, Pasco County, Pinellas County, and Hillsborough County. These will be the primary areas of focus for the Tampa MSA. Starting at a high level, the labor market, Tampa's job gains remained resilient over the last 12 months. Most of the gains were in the median income, education, and health services sector. In the high income sectors, we saw a dip in the financial activities and information sectors, but those losses were overshadowed by the gains in the professional business services sector. So a little bit of decline from what we're used to seeing in Tampa. But perspective is key. And we have to remember how far Tampa has come in high-income job growth over the past couple of years, in which they were either number 1 or number 2 in high-income job gains consistently. When we compare Tampa to other parts of Central and Southwest Florida, Tampa has the higher number of high-income jobs, substantially beating out all the other areas. And one of the key drivers I want to highlight is the Water Street development in Tampa. which has helped revitalize Tampa's urban core. This is a $4 billion project that's estimated to create 12,600 high-income jobs over its development. Some noteworthy employers include Cinevis Bank, RSM, Rapid7, and ReliaQuest. Now, ReliaQuest recently opened its headquarters last year in the Water Street district. It's one of the leading companies in cybersecurity, and these companies, Rapid7 and ReliaQuest, are companies where the average salary is well over $100,000. So the tech scene and work from home trends have changed the demographics in the urban core over the past couple of years. Even looking at some of the luxury apartment complexes in Water Street, such as Asher, Core Residences, Heron Preserve, around 90% occupied with rents all the way up to $11,000 a month. Not to mention some of the for sale condo developments like One Tampa Condos, which brought in $200 million in sales in just 4 months. These condos start at $1 million and reach as high as $6 million for the most luxurious penthouse units. And so the higher income households continue to migrate into Tampa's urban areas, but also to suburban areas that allow convenient access to these employment opportunities. So how has the market responded to this growth? Looking at our market rankings updated through February, we see that Tampa continues to outperform its historical average. Tampa's been on a hot streak lately, and I can't remember a time when we first released this map, when Tampa was not green. Breaking down the active and sold out inventory by price segment, we see that most of the available new home inventory is priced $400,000 or higher. The $300,000 to mid $300,000 price segments, that inventory is dwindling fast. And with land costs rising, I suspect that these light blue bars will continue to drop in these price segments, only to be sustained by growth in attached product more in the suburban areas. But look at that $500,000 segment. There are more sold out projects in that segment than the $300,000 and $400,000 segments. And this is something I've been telling our Tampa clients this year. The higher income segments, the move up and luxury buyer segments have really been carrying the Tampa market. The entry level segment has been pretty flat throughout the end of 2023. Rates are still elevated and price appreciation in Tampa hasn't really abated, so affordability is still a concern for these entry level buyers. However, the move-up buyers and the high-end buyers are still holding strong in the Tampa market. And so growth has been more prevalent in areas that appeal to all of the buyer segments. Most of the sales activity occurred in Pasco and Hernando County. These are areas 30 minutes to an hour outside of central Tampa, where that $300,000, $350,000 inventory still exists. But also these are areas that offer more house and space for the higher end buyers desiring a more suburban lifestyle. And areas like Pasco County continue to lead in starts and closings where there's just more available land. It's not too much of a stretch or a drive from Tampa proper. Hernando doesn't have nearly as much starts and closings activity, but I suspect that will change over the long term as Pasco County is built out. Drilling a bit further into where the demand is, we see that most of the activity is concentrated in Northeast Pasco and South Hillsborough County. In Northeast Pasco, the strongest selling communities are in Wesley Chapel and Zephyr Hills. These communities include large-scale master plans such as Two Rivers, Epperson, Murata, and even smaller communities such as Zephyr Ridge, again offering a solution to each type of buyer migrating to the area. These are areas where buyers still can find a home in that $350,000 price range with desirable amenities and reasonable commute times, not just to downtown Tampa, but also within Wesley Chapel, which has plenty of retail and recreation, especially for the familiar buyers. We have the Tampa Premium Outlets, shops at Wiregrass, both on State Road 56 in this corridor. We have Pop Stroke, which recently just opened this year, a mini golf course, and we have Crate, which hosts a variety of small businesses, small restaurants, and shipping containers. There's live music, kids' playgrounds in the area, so plenty of activity and conveniences within that Wesley Chapel region of Pasco County to keep one occupied. In the South Hillsborough County, and even in the North Manatee County submarkets, communities such as Berry Bay, and the Master Plan Lagoon community, South Shore Bay, North River Ranch. These have been some of the top selling communities over the past few months. Areas like South Hillsborough County and even pushing into North Manatee County remain popular due to their central location. As you get into North Manatee County, you're within 45 minutes to an hour drive of both St. Pete and downtown Tampa, but also 30 to 45 minutes from some of the popular entertainment clusters in Sarasota. So both areas north and south of central Tampa continue to grow and will be primary hotspots for the foreseeable future as they offer convenient access to primary employment and entertainment centers while boasting an array of services and conveniences in the local area. And I want to highlight some key developments that will continue to push growth in the Tampa MSA, Pasco County in particular. One of them being the Moffett Cancer Center expansion. Near the intersection of the Sun Coast Toll Road and State Road 52, this is a 775-acre research and life sciences development that will create nearly 14,000 jobs. It's one of Moffitt's largest expansions in the last 40 years, and it's a $1.6 billion project. This will bring demand not only to Pasco County, but as more employment centers are built in Pasco, it opens up Hernando County as well. There's also the double branch mixed use development off State Road 52 and I-75. So this will feature about 400,000 square feet of retail, 3,500 housing units, 300 hotel beds, and 2.5 million square feet of industrial and life sciences development. So again, more job creation, more urbanization, which of course will drive growth for Pasco County, but also for more of the tertiary areas around Pasco County over the long term. So how is land shaping up in Tampa? We have about 8,000 future lots. These are lots with actual observed development activity in the Tampa MSA. Over half of these lots are in Pasco County, but Hernando County is starting to show some promise with 27% of these future lots, higher than previous year's numbers. Within Pasco, most of these lots are in Northeast Pasco, mostly continuations in existing master plans such as Two Rivers, and similarly in South Hillsborough County, continuations in South Shore Bay. So putting it all together, lack of available and affordable new home supply continues to support housing development in the outer regions. Pasco and Hernando, even south in South Hillsborough County and North Manatee area, these high-income jobs and further expansions and developments in outer counties will support housing demand in those tertiary markets long-term. However, as we saw earlier, most of the appreciation in Tampa is influenced by the move-up and high-end buyer segments. The entry-level and local buyers continue to struggle, and rising land costs make deals harder to pencil, which could potentially threaten future inventory. Transitioning over into the Orlando market, we'll talk about the counties that make up the Orlando MSA, which include Lake County, Seminole County, Osceola County, and Orange County. We'll also touch on some of the other markets around Orlando and in Central Florida, which continue to influence housing demand in the Orlando MSA. So in Orlando, all job sectors experienced growth over the last 12 months, with weaker gains in high income sectors, but still positive growth overall, which is a good trend. Of course, leisure and hospitality make up most of the labor market in Orlando, but what's encouraging to see is the surge in the education and health services sector, posting even more job gains than leisure and hospitality. We've been seeing multiple expansions from some of the nation's leading healthcare providers. I'm going to highlight a couple of developments, which are really just the tip of the iceberg. Orlando Health is expanding in Apopka. They have a 2-story, 100,000 square foot hospital that will have 144 beds. This project will likely be completed between the end of this year to the beginning of next year. And also UCF is opening a new nursing facility. It's a $68 million project with 90,000 square feet of space. This will be available during the 2025 to 2026 academic year, and it's expected to produce an additional 150 nurses per year. This is really to address the concern about the nursing shortage in Florida. It's estimated that by the year 2035, there will be a shortage of nearly 40,000 nurses. And Florida will have to graduate 2,300 nurses per year to address that shortage. So the rising developments in healthcare are encouraging to see. So going back to our market ranking map and shifting our focus to Orlando, we see that Orlando is slightly overperforming. And if anyone can recall the Orlando frame a couple months back, this market was in the red or slightly underperforming. So it keeps bouncing back and forth between slightly overperforming and slightly underperforming, exhibiting some volatility. And a few dynamics are occurring that explain this phenomenon, but most of them are centered around affordability. When we look at the payment to household income ratio across the markets of discussion, we see that Orlando is actually the most expensive market, with an average payment to household ratio of about 36%. We have to keep in mind the concentration of jobs in the Orlando MSA, which are centered around leisure and hospitality and education and health services. These are median income jobs that are driving Orlando's growth. And so price sensitive, interest rate sensitive buyers will look to flock to more affordable areas such as Lakeland, the most affordable metro on this list, sacrificing some locational convenience for a new home that they want and they can afford. Breaking down projects by price point, most of the active projects are priced $500,000 and up. There are more than double the projects in the $500,000 price segment than in the mid 300,000s. And even in the $400,000 price segment and up, there is substantially more inventory. When we break the geography down by county, we see that the average base prices in all Orlando counties exceeds $400,000. Again, this pushes buyers to greater Central Florida markets such as Polk County, which have far less expensive homes. We see in Polk County that the average base price is around $320,000 and has the highest average sales pace out of all counties in Central Florida. Within Polk County, sales paces are strong in cities such as Davenport and Haines City, and these are areas about an hour from the top employment and destinations in the Orlando MSA. And so it comes as no surprise that most of the housing activity is concentrated in Polk County, which is synonymous with the Lakeland MSA. Within the Orlando MSA, Osceola and Lake County lead in starts and closings. There's increasing activity in the Lake County region. Multiple commercial and residential developments are shaping the area, which will support more housing activity, and more on that coming up on future slides. If we look at where the strongest selling communities are, we'll see that most of them are concentrated in St. Cloud, particularly in the Narcoossee corridor, offering convenient access to the employment and entertainment destinations in the Lake Nona region, and also in the Horizon West area, closest to Disney World and Universal Studios. We're also seeing some communities in Mineola and Apopka with strong sales paces. And these peripheral markets in Orlando have some exciting developments that would drive more household growth and housing demand. One of them is the Wild Oaks development in Apopka, located off West Kelly Park Road in 429. This is a 215-acre mixed-use development that will have 200,000 square feet of retail, 11 commercial out parcels, 2 hotels, and somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 multifamily and condo units. There's so much more that is part of this project. It broke ground earlier this year, and the residential components of the project will begin construction toward the end of 2024. Apopka is a rapidly changing market. The surrounding area is mostly rural, so this development will add much needed commercial and services to the area. It will appeal to those priced out buyers that want Winter Garden but don't necessarily want to be in Lake County. And given that this development is off the 429 corridor, it really opens up Lake County for continued growth. Even when we consider the Horizon West area, where the average single-family home is priced $600,000, that's for a new home. If you're priced out of there, you either go south into Polk County or Davenport, or you could opt for Kissimmee. But Apopka is becoming an increasingly popular alternative. We also have another Crooked Can being developed in Mineola. It has high visibility off the Florida Turnpike, and anyone who has visited or is familiar with the Crooked Can in Winter Garden will understand how exciting this is for the area. It's 4 times larger than the Winter Garden location. It'll have a tap room, flex lawn space, a food hall that will support other small businesses that could potentially expand and open other locations in the area one day. So this will bring much more traffic to the Mineola area, which has mostly agricultural and residential land uses. Another exciting infrastructure project is the State Road 56 Lake and Orange County Expressway. It's a $218 million infrastructure project that spans 4.4 miles connecting US 27 and 429. Construction starts May 2024 and will be complete by 2027. It's a new expressway that will improve connectivity between Lake and Orange County and really opens up Lake County as an attractive option for those seeking more attainable housing. And when we look at vacant developed lots, we see that Lake County has the highest absorption, significant levels of VDL, but low months of supply, below that 24 to 30 month level that we typically look for as far as being balanced. Across central Orlando, however, Polk County continues to beat other counties in lot absorption. Some of the tertiary counties, Alachua, Sumter, Marion County, won't see much activity in the short term until more of the secondary markets reach their peak. So what does the future hold for Central Florida as far as land? Most of the future lots are in Polk and Osceola County. There are about 37,000 future lots under development in Central Florida, and Lake County isn't too far behind with 13% of those future lots. Across various submarkets, again, we see that St. Cloud has more housing on the way, nearly 4,000 future lots in development. In Northeast Polk County, areas such as Davenport, Haines City, Lake Alfred, with just over 3,500 lots in development. So what are the key takeaways for Orlando? Orlando is an up and down market, and regions around it in Central Florida are more appealing due to their lower price points, particularly areas an hour or so from Central Orlando, such as Northeast Polk County, which see the most housing activity and have the most future lots. So the labor market is strong, but there's a growing need for more attainable housing to cater to the growing number of median income households who can't necessarily spend $450,000 in a new home. However, some exciting developments are happening in the outer regions of Orlando that will make them more attractive long term. And so we conclude with our catch-22 market, Jacksonville. And we'll see why it's a catch-22 market in just a moment. For Jacksonville, we'll be looking at Nassau County, Duval County, Clay County, and St. Johns County. One of the key features for Jacksonville is a strong labor market. Nearly every sector posted job gains over the last 12 months, with the exception of the minor drop in the information sector. However, you'll notice that Jacksonville had far more high-income job gains than Tampa and Orlando, about 5,200 added between the financial activities and professional business services sector. And the professional business services sector is quickly gaining market share. It's the third most represented job sector in the Jacksonville MSA. So plenty of high-income jobs coming to the area, but still median and some of the lower income sectors remain prevalent. And as Ali mentioned, Jacksonville ranked #1 again in domestic net migration, higher than both Tampa and Orlando, which actually saw a drop over the past year. Jacksonville continues to gain national attention and ranked #3 for job seekers in the US. It's where job availability and wage growth meets affordable housing. And we're going to key in on affordable housing because when we look at the affordability index, which takes into account home prices, interest rates, taxes, Jacksonville leads in affordability compared to other large markets in Florida. So we have job growth, we have migration, we have affordable housing. Jacksonville should be on fire. And yet, when we look at our market ranking index map, Jacksonville is yellow or performing similar to its pre-pandemic average. And this is where the catch-22 comes in. Why is it that economic fundamentals and migration haven't fully translated into the housing market? And it's because Jacksonville has the highest concentration of entry-level buyers. When we look at this price segment chart, it is completely different from Tampa and Orlando. Most of the inventory is in the $300,000 price point, and still a shocking amount of inventory is in the $200,000 to $299,000 price point. And so when you have a market that is dominated by a particular buyer segment, that market becomes much more sensitive to macroeconomic forces that impact that segment. We know that the current housing climate with elevated prices and interest rates is the least favorable for the entry-level buyer. Moreover, in markets like Jacksonville, buyers are surrounded with other housing alternatives via multifamily and built-to-rent. For those that don't know, Zonda tracks built-to-rent units across the nation, and we track those that are active and under construction. When we rank various metros by BTR units under construction, we see that Jacksonville is one of the top metros in the United States for the number of future BTR units. Jacksonville has also experienced substantial increases in multifamily supply over the last couple of years. And so first-time home buyers have much more options in this market than anywhere else in Florida. And so like other markets, the move up and high-end buyers have been responsible for most of the price appreciation in the Jacksonville MSA. The line here for the high-end price segment is actually steeper than the line in the Tampa market, meaning price appreciation for this segment was stronger in Jacksonville than it was in Tampa. Looking at price appreciation by county, we see that St. Johns County is where the growth is concentrated, with an average base price of $570,000. Between January of 2023 and January 2024, base prices in St. Johns County grew by at least $50,000. Far more than any other county in Jacksonville. St. Johns County continues to appeal to the growing number of move-up and high-end buyers in Jacksonville. And so, of course, St. Johns County has the highest concentration of communities with the strongest sales paces. There are some hotspots in Nassau County, mostly centered around the Wildlight Master Plan, and even for some of the more expensive communities close to Fernandina Beach, such as Amelia National, are selling well given their price point. But St. Johns County by far has the greater concentration of top-selling communities. Just to name a couple, Dorada at Entrada by D.R. Horton, Shearwater by Lennar, St. Augustine Lakes, really communities centered around that Silverleaf Master Plan. And even towards South Duval County, you have Seven Pines by ICI Homes and Hardwood Farms by Lennar. These communities continue to sell well. So what makes St. Johns County and the south side of Duval County so popular? There's a lot that could be said, but a lot of the highlights include proximity to some of the best shopping and dining in the Jacksonville MSA. St. John's Town Center has about 175 retail stores and boasts a total of 1.4 million square feet of retail space. There's also the Avenue, which also has 150 retail stores and totals 1.1 million square feet. St. Johns County also has great schools, ranked second out of 68 Florida districts. And its location between St. Augustine and Jacksonville allows access to 43 miles of beaches. So between the highly amenitized master plans, the schools, the beaches, and proximity to the best shopping and dining in the area, St. John's continues to be a top destination for those considering a home in Jacksonville. There's also some exciting developments in St. Johns County that will continue to increase its appeal to future residents. Highlighting just a couple, there's the widening of County Road 210, which will add an additional 4 lanes of traffic, improving east-west travel, and also commute times between I-95 and US 1. The third phase of the First Coast Expressway, the map shown on the right, is a $600 million project that will connect Clay County and St. Johns County. The Clay County portion is scheduled to be complete by 2025, and the St. Johns portion should be complete by 2030. This, of course, supports growth for St. Johns County, but also opens up Clay County for future growth as well. Not too far from the St. Johns portion of the expressway is a $123 million regional park plan. And it consists of 5 regional parks that will have a variety of amenities such as sports courts, splash pads, picnic pavilions, playgrounds, library hubs, and so much more. So there's plenty of development happening in St. Johns County that will continue to shape the region over the next few years. When we look at VDL, Jacksonville remains undersupplied at around that 20-month level. And this is below the pre-pandemic average. With starts kicking up this year, it is likely that the market will continue to be undersupplied of lots. More on that coming shortly. When we break down vacant developed lots by county, we see that St. Johns County has the highest absorption with just 13.8 months supply, but over 5,000 lots. Clay County has about the same amount of vacant developed lots as Nassau County, but has a higher absorption. And over the long term, I expect to see more activity in Clay County as more infrastructure is built in the area and developments such as the First Coast Expressway bridge the gap between St. Johns and Clay County. Duval County still has a lot of growth ahead of it, undersupplied at just 15.4 months with significant levels of VDL, but hasn't quite reached its potential, lacking some of the infrastructure that is present in other developing markets. Looking at where the future lots are, there's about 25,000 lots in development. Most of them are concentrated in St. Johns and Duval County. And within these regions, the West Side submarket by far has the most lots on the way at about 7,000 lots, followed by Central St. Johns County at nearly 4,000 lots. The West Side is developing at a rapid pace as well. The Westlake DRI project is slated to bring more jobs to the West Side, and south of I-10 offers convenient access to the Jacksonville Naval Air Station. St. John's, as we just went over, has plenty of developments that will support housing activity moving forward. But we also have to keep in mind those markets in the West Side, north of I-10, west of 295, that will continue to grow as well. So given starts activity and what we're seeing in the Jacksonville market, what is the risk of oversupply? Thankfully, it's very low. When we look at historical trends for starts and lot deliveries, we see it's much more likely that Jacksonville's market will be balanced or even remain undersupplied of lots. Even in the extreme scenarios with vacant developed lots increasing 20% and starts decreasing 10%, the 25 to 26 month level is really a return to pre-pandemic norms. And so key takeaways for Jacksonville. Jacksonville has favorable economic and migration conditions that potentially set it up to be the best performing market long term. What is holding Jacksonville back are the macroeconomic conditions, mainly elevated interest rates and home prices, which continue to impact the dominant entry-level buyer segment. Over the long term, peripheral markets such as Clay County will continue to grow as more of the infrastructure developments come. Submarkets within Duval County have more commercial developments on the way that will make them more appealing to future buyers. This concludes the Tampa, Orlando, and Jacksonville housing forecast. Thank you all for tuning in. Please remember to scan the QR code, subscribe to our emails for upcoming webinars, economic reports, podcasts, and more. Let us know how we did. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or Allie. As a reminder, this recording will be posted within 24 hours on our social media channels. We're on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. The recording will also be on our blog at www.zondahome.com, zondahome.com/blog. Thank you and have a great day.